Welcome to our webinar series on innovation on the front line. We'll just give folks a few minutes. I see folks trickling in. Let's give it a few minutes and then we'll get started. Great. Why don't I set the context? As a part of this innovation on the front line, the idea is to celebrate the service industry. So we'll be talking about people, we'll be talking about technologies that enable, empower intelligent service enterprises, keep the world up and running. And as a part of that, we have two great leaders with me today. We have Anil Pai, the global head of the field service management practice in TCS, and David Troll. David is from Texi, is the SVP and GM for North America. And I thought maybe we could start off by a quick introduction. David, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Pratik. Thanks for inviting me. This is a great series. It's exciting to participate in this discussion, especially with leaders like yourself and Anil. So yeah, by way of quick introduction, I've been in the field service space primarily as a technology provider, but also inside operators over the past 15 years. I've gotten to see many different sides of the equation. The technology continues to evolve. The nature of work continues to evolve. It's an exciting place to be, and I love talking about this. Is eager to share some insights and learn some things from you and Anil today.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Pratik. Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. This is Anil Pai. I head the field service management practice for TCS, and I'm really glad to be here. Sorry, it was a bit of a technical glitch. I think I'm back again. So look, the whole point of being on sessions like this, and Pratik, taking a step back, I really wouldn't say I'm an expert. I just would say that I have been in the industry and I have seen a lot of things. Okay, we call that experience also.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of these sessions is we share these experiences because all of us have different learnings from these experiences, some good, some bad. And when we meet people like you, Pratik, David, and also people on the call who have experiences that they bring to the table, I think collectively we all become wiser. Okay, that's what I always believe in. And as giveaways and takeaways from these kind of webinars, it's always a mutual win-win. You give something and you take a lot more than you give. That would be my submission as we get on this call.
Very, very well said, Anil. The best way to describe that is we are passionate about the service industry, and we are putting our collective thoughts on how we can get it to the next level and keep improving. So let me start off, guys. Let me start off by talking about this word EX, employee experience. We are talking about people on the front line. We talk about employee experience in other sectors. It's about remote work, a lot of technologies coming in. This term has accelerated during the pandemic. US is expecting 20 million more workers to be working remotely, and this trend is going to continue. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, there's no remote work for field service people. The other ones were keeping it up and running. What are you seeing in the sphere, in the service industry from an EX employee experience perspective? What are some of the technologies and changes that are coming through? Maybe, David, we could start off by you. You're right in the front and center of it with your company. What does employee experience mean to Texi? What does employee experience mean to that are servicing?
It's a great question, Pratik, and without a doubt, although we're all getting kind of tired of talking about COVID, it's still the framework for the past year, right? We've all been living through it, and having been inside an operator when this all started, the first thing that we needed to do was, how do you continue to roll 10,000 trucks a day? How do you continue to ensure that your people are safe? How do you get the PPE, which is what we were all struggling with, and continue to provide essential services? And so you're asking a lot. You're asking your customers to continue to trust you, that you'll take care of them. You're asking your employees to not just perform the work, but do it in a more constrained environment, in a more challenging environment. And there's some basics about good operational practice that goes in there. And there's also some technology that you need to deploy. And again, that's part of what brought me to Texi. I saw it at work in that environment, and the idea of remote support and on demand and visual engagement has been there for a while, but it was a wind in the sails for our business when suddenly going on site wasn't just a operational concern. It became a safety concern. It became a resource availability concern. So for me, I think, you know, I want to put this all in our rearview mirror, but I also really think that it shined a bright light on both strengths and gaps in the system, and helped us understand better what the future of work is going to look like. Not just because people aren't, you know, big companies like Google said work from home through the end of 2021, right? Salesforce is leasing out their tower at you know, in downtown San Francisco, but because we realized of necessity there are things that can be done remotely, and from a technology provider standpoint, we're empowering companies to serve their customers in that remote way, and lets them maintain continuity of service and relationship. And again, this isn't about our product, it's more about, it was nice to have a solution that was able to help companies continue to perform even in these incredibly challenging circumstances.
Anil, David mentioned this future of work, the employee experience, future of work. What are some of the technologies trends that you are seeing? How is it shaping up? What have you seen in your experience working with some of these companies?
Yeah. So Pratik, I think what we are seeing here is not just, you know, I would say fine tuning of technology trend. These trends have been there for quite some time. This, you know, as David was mentioning, it's all about, you know, remote connectivity. It's all about remote guidance and so on, which have been evolving over a period of time. And you know, depending on the organization, they have been attaining majorities there. What is interesting is the spurt of volume that they have seen, you know, over the last 8 to 10 months. What do I mean by that? In fact, you know, I was looking at the newspaper this morning, and I find that the consumer spending patterns which are there in the paper, is Indian papers. I was reading the local Indian news here, and I'm sure that's the kind of trend you are seeing back in the US as well. From September onwards, there is a massive upswing in the consumer durable purchase. Okay, that means people are buying more, you know, HVAC equipments. People are spending more on refrigerators, you know, connected devices, connectivity at home, and so on. And it's understandable, right? The proliferation of home office, you know, has really taken off like anything all across the world. Correct? Which means that, you know, earlier, if organizations were having, you know, one large office buildings where hundreds of employees were working, and if field service companies were taking care of HVAC facilities or those kind of things for these buildings, now you can imagine that same building have been broken up into multiple smaller offices, which means the volume of demand on field service has gone up. Now, what do I mean by that? What it, you know, the pressure that it puts on these technologies is, it is no more a technology where, you know, a few number of companies are trying to get the technicians and the customer connected. Okay, all of a sudden the consumers have gone up, you know, over the period of, you know, 10 to 12 months that we have seen. And these service providing companies did not have the luxury of taking on technicians, training them, so on and so on. So which means that these technologies were kind of tested on the run by the user. The technician was enrolled in the organization maybe in a day or something. Okay, they were told that as part of the induction, this is the technology we'll use, and they were using these technologies, which, you know, when they were at the customer premise for the first time, which means they were getting trained on the job, so to say. So the pressure of intuitiveness on these technologies has really gone up, and from a, you know, connectivity or AI or virtual assistants, which is a good concept, I think how easy they are enabling that has become more important, simply because the time for ramping up these technicians, the volume of traffic, you know, of field services has gone up exponentially. I don't know how long this will continue, but that's the trend that we are seeing over the last, at least after September.
Got it. Got it. And David, Anil mentions remote assistance. You guys, front and center, you are seeing this. One of the challenges I face with our clients is this, call it hesitation in adopting technology. COVID has helped a lot, and I tend to see the positives in driving adoption, volume dependent need for adoption, and mentioned that. what are some of the challenges, pitfalls you suggest to avoid when you're implementing this technology? How would you assure a CSO in an organization that, hey, these are the best practices, implementing and adopting uh, the remote contact, AR, VR aspects of the business?
Yeah, it's always the right question, right? Even as a technology vendor, it's all about utilization, adoption, right? If you buy the best widget and you don't implement it, it delivers no value. And so I see a couple of things, and I probably won't say anything profound here, but I think it's important to emphasize. One is, you have to have a plan. Some companies bought our solution at the surge of COVID, and it was a very reactive purchase. They didn't know how they were going to use it. It was simply, grasping for, the life raft. And so even months later, as they realized they could continue to roll trucks and maybe they didn't need it so urgently, they had PPE available, customers were comfortable with their safety protocols. The risk is, as anything, it becomes shelfware, as opposed to when you really think about digital transformation and where's my workforce going and where does the technology enable us to go? And the technology paves the path, but the workforce has to go there too, right? So we've been talking a lot about this subset of digital transformation we call visual transformation, because the idea that you have to go on site to provide a certain service has so many friction points in it, right? The first one is you've got to actually go through the process of figuring out what it takes, right? That remote diagnostic that happens with a service agent. And then you've got to schedule someone and you've got to get them there and hope that you did the right diagnostic. So in any of these scenarios, the adoption of the technology could start with something very simple like, hey, let's just add it as a complement to what our agents are doing today. And if we can solve it remotely by seeing it, let's do that. And if we can, at least we understand what's in front of us. And when our tech or our engineer gets on site, they've got a much better chance of a first-time fix, which means, right, more fulfilled employee, happier customer, et cetera. But you start to find those moments where you can do something remote that you thought you couldn't, right? And that then helps you think about the next level of that transformation, right? So I always think about these things as have a long-term plan, but iterate. You've got to get to the next level before you can actually understand what you can do in the next phase beyond that. And so that adoption is, of course, there's always good best practices. Test it among people. Pick some of your most reluctant workers to tell you what's wrong with it so you preemptively find the issues and resolve them. But you've got to commit to it. You've got to have a plan. You've also got to recognize it's a journey. It's not a one-step thing. And that's where we've seen the most value is the people who had the plan. They're now getting to the AI-powered automation that because they understand their work process is so much better. They know what they can do with technology and what they need people for.
I want to come to that AI comment that you made in a bit. Anil, one of the first things I remember, one of my first conversations with you used the word crawl, walk, and run. And it stuck in me. And I think such a great point. Tell me, what are you seeing with your clients? What's that crawl, walk, run? How do you take our service companies along that journey? What are some of the lessons learned that you're seeing there?
Yeah. In fact, that completely sits front and center with what David was talking about. In terms of having those iterative steps, having that longer vision in mind, right? And these are the phases that all of us go through. I mean, we crawl, we kind of go forward slightly, walk, and then we start to run. Now, this brings me to the concept, a very interesting concept, which I came across in concept of reading the novel by Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers, right? So I was listening to a lecture, where he was talking about this, and the concept that he was elaborating, which is not directly in that novel, but which is kind of behind that, is the concept of capitalization. Okay, and this capitalization is a concept, by the famous American New Zealand psychologist, James Flynn. Now, what it means is that, those countries, and they talk of many things. They talk about countries, they talk about teams, they talk about, many organizations and many entities who are successful versus who are not, including individuals, right? Now, the concept here is those who are able to use the resources at their disposal in a better manner are able to succeed, more comprehensively. And what do organizations, who run field services have before they adopt digital and so on? They have the data that they're operating on. They have the knowledge that they're operating on. Okay. Now, many times companies forget that the technologies you are adopting for implementing AI and things like that are actually using the knowledge of what you have to make those recommendations. Okay. Now, unless you have a good utilization or capitalization, that's the word that Gladwell uses, of the knowledge base that you have been creating, you cannot expect your AI systems to make your recommendation, which is sitting aptly there. Now, it could be a recommendation where the customer wants to do something self-service. It could be a recommendation where the technician wants to see what was the solution provided for a similar problem in the past. It could be anything. Remember, these recommendations are not imaginations of the digital solution. These are all based on the knowledge that you have. So unless you are building that knowledge, unless you are capitalizing that knowledge, I think it will be difficult for you to become that outlier and be successful in field service management.
Got it. So I want to pick on one of the things Anil, you mentioned. I'm a big student of AI, I would say, definitely not an expert. One of the questions we face is when you talk about AI, when you talk about the AI use cases, still people find it tough to grasp. These use cases are real. And one of the key challenges is data, accessibility to data. You need to have your algorithms, you need to have the data layer that you mentioned. Not all enterprises have had that. What advice do you have when we are talking about AI to service enterprises? How should we take that story? What is sitting well? This is important. AI automation will help the industry grow. What's your advice on it? What are you seeing? How should we talk about this when we talk to service enterprises?
Look, if you ask me, this is how organizations improved their engineering in the past. They had something called as industrial engineering, right? What were these industrial engineers do? And I'm saying that because I was an industrial engineer at one point in time. And the whole idea was you kind of standardize and consolidate and make sense of what is happening all around. Okay. And standardization, I would say, is the first step, if you haven't done it yet, of capturing everything that is happening in the organization and give a method to the madness. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the pressure on standardization and the pressure on capturing everything in system will go up. Why? Because volumes are going up. The pressures on organization to quickly ramp up, and have contractors go and do that additional volume of work, that is going up. So unless companies focus on having a good layer of standardization and consolidation, now you can call it as industrial engineering for field services, or you can call it field service engineering, call it whatever, it doesn't matter. But the whole idea is everything has to be captured, standardized, and as and when somebody is going and doing a field service out there, be it a contractor workforce, be it your own workforce, being somebody who's recruited yesterday into the company, please ensure that everything that is happening out there is captured back into the knowledge base that you have. Now, you might want to have a layer of people capturing that knowledge if you haven't started doing that, because that's extra work. I mean, you're trying to set the house in order as you're running, so the work can go up temporarily. But in the long term, if you have this engineering aspect covered, if you have this knowledge capturing aspect covered, I think you are setting up your house in order to build up a big, digital leap in your organization. I'm sure David, mentioned that point, but I thought I will kind of add that foundational layer to what he was talking about.
David, your comments on AI automation, what are you seeing? How do we remove barriers to adoption from a service industry perspective?
Yeah, Pratik, you hit on it earlier, right? We hear the talk about the fourth industrial revolution, automation taking away not just blue collar jobs, but white collar jobs. There's a lot of press around that now. And that's been a story for over a decade. I remember, 10 years ago, analysts were saying by 2020, 85, 90% of all service interactions will be, self-service, machine-based, automated. We're nowhere near there. And I think the trend in AI, although there's always the risk, right? The Terminator scenarios, there's the trend in AI has been a lot around augmenting humans. And some people will call that a kind of a cover story because it's job displacement that's coming among a new class of worker. But the reality is, if you don't have an AI first foundation, it reminds me very much of the SaaS revolution. And watching bloated old on-prem software companies try and port to SaaS typically lost, the successful ones lost 2 to 3 years of market opportunity while they replatformed and then had to play catch up. And so to me, AI first has to be central, both as a utilizer of the technology, but also a purveyor of that. And if you can't come at it with an eye towards how all that data should, what the framework is for how all that data is going to enable, you don't know what to, as I said earlier, you don't know which things to automate. And so to Anil's point, just capturing that data, whether it's manual or it's system-based, and having this iterative progression, saying, I know I want to automate because it improves customer access and response time and reduces, unpleasant, familiar, repetitive tasks to my workers. These are all virtues, but I need to know which flows to automate, and I need to know what data I have to build that on. So I know this is fairly generic, but you have to have an AI first perspective. If you don't have it, you should start porting to that now, and it might slow you down in your core business, but you'll be relevant in 5 years, where otherwise you won't.
Yeah, and then you mentioned a good point, David. This has come up in a number of my conversations, the fear of job displacement with AI and automation. And I thought I was reading an article, some interesting numbers from the researchers. Automation will add about 5% to the US GDP over the next 3 years. And you see there's the upskilling of labor. When you get the manual tasks to automate, there will be a natural shift of labor to better tasks. And I thought this was interesting. A simple example, in 1979, this is before Excel was introduced, there were about 300,000 accountants in the US. 1985, Excel was introduced. By 89, number of accountants doubled. So it didn't take away jobs, it made it easier for the function to grow. And with automation and AI, we are seeing that we will see an evolution. I think as leaders, we take that message to the service company, saying, hey, this is how you do it. I think it is our job to tell them, hey, whether it's data, we'll help you with the data, but adopting these technologies only help with the evolution. There's some interesting questions coming up, and wanted to pick one for the team. And as questions come up, I'll jump in and make sure we answer that.
Sure.
This question is, how do you view consistency of quality service experience within a hybrid workforce? That is in-house techs, junior techs, experienced techs, contractors, self-service. What is needed to ensure service quality and resolution can be achieved regardless of the resources deployed? Anil, do you want to take a shot at that?
Yes. In fact, and it directly, links to what we spoke earlier. Now, if you look at, see what is basically involved in a field service, right? The whole objective is there is a customer support requirement. I wouldn't call it issue. There is a customer support requirement. Tech has to go there, solve the issue, boom. And that's the best case scenario, correct? But not everything happens as per best case scenario. So when a tech goes there are questions around how to solve it. There are questions around what the entitlements are, whether it is a free or warranty or covered as part of the contract. Now, imagine if the tech is able to focus on what he's trained to do best, which is solve the issue, right? Everything else, you take it and make it a part of the data and the system, whereby the tech is able to focus on the core issue. And on the core issue, I am sure there are standard operating procedure. I'm assuming the company has steps to solve that technical problem. And if that is not there, at least the tech knows whom to call for that issue, correct? The problem now is the tech is getting, caught up in multiple things. The system is not supporting for recommendation in terms of what the entitlements are. So even if technically the problem is solved, the customer is still unhappy because he has to pay where he thought he doesn't have to pay, right? Things like that. So my suggestion here would be, let all those items which the tech need not focus on, build it into the data layer, build it into the automation and artificial intelligence so customer can self-query and see what they're entitled for, and let the technician do what he is designed to do best, which is to service the technical problem. or to connect to the guy in the background using again an AR/VR technology. If that happens, whether it is in-house technician or a contractor, I think you will have a lot of standardization of service.
Got it. David, you have been an operator. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, Anil makes a great point. It's an excellent question. And I think one thing I'd add on top of that is there's a variability, not just in the knowledge and the experience of the resource. So I have an old client who always refers to his greenhorns and graybeards, right? And we're seeing an aging of the tech workforce.
Yep.
We're seeing a lot of institutional knowledge, right, age out, or people retiring. They're hard jobs, field jobs, and it's a challenge to do them over a sustained period of time. And it's not as attractive a career path for younger people. There's a lot of data out there that says that young millennials, particularly, aren't drawn to that kind of work. So I think one of the things that you end up doing with the right solutions is not just empowering people and setting up the job properly, but you may have that institutional knowledge in a graybeard who doesn't want to be in the field anymore, and you can give them a career path into a remote tier 2 support role where you can then send out that greenhorn and have someone who maybe is trained and certified but not proficient, that they don't have 1,000 at-bats, and they can still be on site, and with the right support tools like remote visual, they can actually access the knowledge that they need. And so the company's actually providing a better outcome for the employees on both fronts, right? And of course, that better outcome means a better consumer or customer outcome. So I think it's really important what Anil said. And then I'd add to that, the variability of the workforce, right? 1099, the Uberization of work. You never know what kind of person is going to be on site. They may have, some handy skills and a bag of tools, but they've never done the job before. And so providing them with that knowledge real time on demand becomes crucial. And that can be, again, system-based, like an AI self-help platform, or it can be a human with the education, the knowledge, and the experience.
Got it.
Yeah.
There's another one that I see. What are your views on should field service technician be cross-selling and upselling if given an option, as they are direct customer facing in some scenarios? That's an interesting one. David, what do you think?
Yeah, we lived through this, and it's funny how people categorize them, but I was building a business that was predicated on service for third parties, so field service as a service.
Yeah.
And a key component there was because we weren't like a service provider for that work, we were just monetizing the job. And so you needed to find other ways. Here's the thing, service people, technicians, they're not salespeople. But if you give them the opportunity to meet a customer need, they're actually really happy to do that. And so I think sending a salesperson out to do a technician's job or an engineer's job often backfires, right? But sending a service-oriented person out there and give them the opportunity to meet another customer need. You've got a smart home device there. This one complements it, right? It really depends on how you manage the customer expectation, how you train your people, how you reward and incentivize. But you've got to get the mental shift down that we're not trying to make you a seller, right? We're actually trying to make sure that you can fulfill all the needs of your customer once you're on site. Because when you're in the home, you have access to them, not only trust, but visibility into everything else that's going on. It might be that you went to install a smart doorbell, but it turns out that their Wi-Fi is weak, and that's the problem. And being able to get them that booster right there on the spot is both revenue and also customer satisfaction, and that's really key.
It also maybe calls for, I would say, better training for the workforce as well. So I mean, I would tend to agree with you that I wouldn't want the service people to tell me something in my face, but that ability to identify the customer pain point and have that latitude to see that and then tie it into an offering is important. Anil, what are you seeing? I thought this question was interesting and different.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting. And look, I think in the first 7 to 8 seconds, you make a decision by looking at a technician, or a person, whether you can trust him or her or not, right? Now, imagine if you're saddling the technician with a lot of things which are in his, discomfort zone. That means talking about things that he or she is not comfortable about. That technician is not able to win the trust of the customer. We just spoke about that, right? So which means you put all those variables that you don't want the technician to get caught up with into the system, let the customer understand that as auto entitlement checks, so on and so forth, and let the technician be a trusted advisor for the issue at hand. Now, the moment the customer has a trust in the technician that what he or she is saying is right, they are the right trusted advisors. Believe you me, if the technician says, look, you are buying a refrigerator or you're buying a AC, you need a stabilizer with that, or you need something else with that, I am sure the customer is prone to consider that more as to rejecting that proposal, right? So I would say make the technician more certain by all those systems you have and make them more credible. I am sure they'll become good salesmen too.
Yeah, yeah. So Anil, you mentioned a good point. I see a lot of parallels with enterprise selling. I come from the sales world. It's about building trust. If I am going to a client trying to sell, I may not have as much success when I say, hey, I'm here to solve your points. I'm here to advise you. Now, if you start trusting me that I am bringing the data points, you will open up a lot more. And it's that, call it the empathy that has to come out as well. As we talk about service, and it's an interesting thing, Anil, David. I have young kids at home, and we're talking about education and hard skills and stuff, and we tend to focus on the hard skills. But if you think 10 years out, when my kids will be in the job workforce, more than the hard skills, it's the empathy, right? How do you identify a problem? How do you structure a problem? How do you solve a problem? Hard skills you can Google and figure out, but it's that ability to connect and build trust with customers. The creating that empathy is also very important. That's good. That's good.
I'd add one thing to that, which is those are the human pieces that the AI is never going to, at least not in our lifetimes, pick up, right? And this is where, when you lean into those human qualities, that's really where that's what people want, right? You want to connect with other people, whether it's a service interaction or a social interaction. So I think you hit a great point there, and that's why somebody in the home, they're not just a skilled labor resource, they're actually a trusted advisor.
Yeah. So we have a tagline, David, Anil, at the company: AI works, humans deliver. So as the technology comes in to take up the manual tasks, you have the humans evolving into the more empathetic, the higher value add kind of expertise, and it's so important. The combined power of human and machines is very, very important. Good stuff. Now I want to bring up another key topic, one of my favorites, and I live in a household dominated by women. My wife is the boss. I have twin daughters. They're young. They're the boss babies, but I'm completely run by them. Women in tech, women in service industry. Fortunately, we do not see a lot of those. What are your thoughts? What are your advice? How do we make it more inclusive? How do we increase the diversity? How do we encourage more female leaders, female technicians in the industry?
Yeah, I've had the benefit of getting to work with some great women in tech, but and in service, and there are some great resources out there and some groups that provide the right support and allyship. And as always, I think for any underrepresented group, it's about having the right role models and seeing representation and the right nurturing. And it's for many reasons, these jobs, as I mentioned, tech jobs don't always, and I mean field service engineer, technician, don't always appeal to millennials. They haven't always appealed to women. Something as simple as safety, going into strangers' homes with no support or supervision. I'm actually optimistic, not to always go back to the tech, but I'm actually optimistic that the skills that women have always demonstrated, I would say better than men, empathy and sociability, that lend themselves to things like call center roles, and will with remote capabilities, will let people grow into roles where it's not about just that one skill, right? We're seeing this eroding of the barriers, right? Someone who's on a phone is an agent. Someone who's in a truck is a tech, and yet that's not necessarily hard barriers, especially as your work model changes. So I think that we need to promote it. We need to ensure that we do it in a a smart and safe way. And if the jobs appeal, that's great. But if you can give those blended jobs, kind of more prominence, you give people a path from an agent to a remote tech. Now they have the skills. Now they can decide if they want to get out there into the field or continue to provide that more technical support, right? Flex some other muscles, but still stay in a remote location.
Absolutely. Absolutely, David. And Pratik, if I may chime in here. Look, I fully agree that, this digital intervention and redefining of, the servitization and breaking up of this whole chain into smaller bits where people can come and contribute is opening up a lot of avenues where the right talent can come and engage. Okay. And when I say right talent, it could be men, it could be women. All right. Yes, there are some issues, as David mentioned, safeties and other things. Organizations, companies, countries, there is this huge revolution that I'm seeing where people are kind of gearing up to address those, I would say holistic challenges, which right now come in the way of, women taking up careers in tech. Now, women will appreciate that there are so many opportunities here in field services, which needs elements of empathy, customer servicing, emotional intelligence, and so on. In fact, there is one example I saw recently, which is, close to where I live, where a young college graduate, a lady, who had bought equipment at home for physical fitness. She realized that the tech who had come home was working with an organization which spoke a completely different language. I mean, both are from India, but the support systems are from North India. They speak a different language. Then the technician came to fix it. And this lady could speak both the languages. And what happened? Finally, she has ended up opening a support center for this organization to help the technician in this part of India talk to their support centers, back in North India. So just by one experience, she opened up she got a business opportunity, and now she is having a support staff which is doing this translation services, etc., for these techs in this part of India who are speaking a different language to the manufacturers who are in the different part of India. That's one live example. So there are many such examples where women can step in, take up those responsibilities, because simply speaking, the field service industry is exploding. And this is the opportunity.
Yep. No, that's a good one. I picked up on a couple of things that you guys mentioned. How do you make it attractive for the millennials? How do you make it a go-to industry for folks? I wanted to share a quick, my experience a bit here. I was fortunate to join field service a few years back in the oil and gas industry. That's where I started, and started with a company called Schlumberger. And one thing I learned there, Schlumberger had a very, very unique way of attracting talent. They did two things. It's almost like marketing, David and Anil. They made the job exciting by hiring young graduates and moving them abroad immediately as a part of the training. So they had an amazing training facility and say, hey, we will hire you and we will place you in a foreign country and you will be doing this job. So if they had hired me saying, hey, I wanted to go abroad, experience new cultures, you will be doing this job in India, would have been less exciting than, hey, doing this job in Europe. And their goal was, we'll keep you outside for 3 or 4 years, you pick up the basics of the field job, and then we'll bring you back to your home country to lead the operations. So they had a very unique way of making it attractive. And I remember when I was graduating from school, it was the #1 job for folks, men and women, both alike. So just thinking about creative ways of making this the field service role exciting. And I'm glad I did that because, saw the passion and saw the diversity, starting up from the basic field service job, working on the rig side, delivering value to as a service company, and then rising up and seeing the passion. And we need more of those. We need to create those for women. And you're right, Anil, the excitement can come anywhere in the chain. It doesn't need to be a specific framework. There are opportunities so much. The services industry is exploding with the technology that is coming in. Leaders can find opportunities everywhere. That's a good point. One thing I wanted to pick up, we've talked about safety, we have talked about connectivity, agility, right? The speed of execution, which came to the forefront because of the entire COVID pandemic. What are you guys seeing when you get into discussions with service companies? I notice yeah, things take time to move. If things are going well in a particular direction, they want to stay with it. They don't want to disrupt the apple cart. What do you see from an agility perspective? What is working well, David, in your experience? What are some of the lessons learned that you want to share with the audience?
It's a great question. If I had the magic wand on this one, I think everybody would be well underway in digital transformation and visual transformation. It is as I said before, clearly one of the biggest barriers to success and kind of crossing this chasm. There are companies that are well into their transformation plans, and this to some degree is a blip on the radar. It's just a short term, we adapt to this too, and there are other companies that their entire business was disrupted. Some of it is organizational structure, right? And when you're at scale, I'm now talking more on the tier one enterprise side. There's only so much, you have the economies of scale and accessing resources and ability to hire and onboard and train and redundant staff that you can, flex, which smaller companies can't always do. I'm a firm believer that crisis presents opportunity, and I think we've seen some incredible innovation, both technology and business model around how companies are adapting to this. And I think back to one of our earlier threads, that question that remains out there is how permanent is this? Is not just work from home, but the new pattern of work. And so I'm a big fan, not so much of the term, but the concept in this fourth industrial revolution, this cognitive phase. What work are people going to be doing in 5 years? And what work will machines be doing? And I do think that we need kind of at a society level, we need that skill and job training, right? We need to move people along and be able to help them over the hump. And that's not something, at least here in the US, that at a policy level has really been at the forefront. It's talked about, but it's not really embedded in our educational infrastructure. So go get a college degree doesn't tell everybody how to be a relevant worker and be gainfully employed in 5 years. And so I think there's agility at the corporate level, which is kind of where the question was, but I think we need it kind of at a deeper level, which is at a societal level. And that means individuals, right? There's that, can I teach that trucker who doesn't need to drive a truck anymore to be a coder? Probably not at scale, but I can actually build my systems to ensure that I know that that's coming. And if that's where the disruption is coming from, we need to actually ensure that there's a path forward for those people of what jobs do exist. So again, company, individual, but also at a society level, I think we need to be more agile. We're not there yet.
Yeah. So Anil, one of the things we're seeing, first time fixed rate, SLA compliance, all of those things are important. Time to value. I'm seeing that come a lot in our discussions. Time to value. Clients are asking for time to value. How quickly can you do it? The entire agility thing, what are you seeing? What are you seeing in the field? What advice do you have to a chief service officer when we talk about agility and how to adopt technologies?
Yeah, so exactly as David mentioned earlier, I think this is a change that has come from outside, and necessity is the mother of invention. 12 months ago, if you asked me to wear this, and go out in public, I would have, said I will never do it, right? But now what has happened? I have 12 different colors to match my shirt and so on. So we have kind of adapted to how we go about in social life, wearing a mask and so on. And same is, what has happened with service organizations. Earlier, there was a, shock and disbelief that no, we can't operate. But then you saw the demand for field services go up because customers were buying more equipment as against, the volumes going down, volumes were going up. So the field service organizations were forced to think of different ways, which is ways of quickly training and onboarding technicians, quickly reskilling technicians. Now, all these things, had you mentioned in a steady state, people would have taken their own sweet time. They would have said, we need this training program, we need those technology aids, and etc., etc. But what happened between March, April, May, June, July of last year, in those 4 to 5 months, mankind have thought through and adopted changes and ways for agility, which we wouldn't have done in even 6 years, preceding that. Okay, so I would say it's an external push, but that push has made people kind of get up from their comfort areas because there was nothing else to do. They had to get up and do something about it, right? And now they are into a mode where they can quickly, ramp up people, they can quickly train technicians. Now that seems to have become all of a sudden not a big challenge. So in a way, although it was a jolt, it was a shock, but I think the field service industry is now kind of set up to say, okay, we have rolled up the sleeves, bring it on. Okay, and with the volumes going up for field services, I think perhaps it's a blessing in disguise, what COVID brought on to this industry.
Yeah, and I will say,
Mindset.
yes. I've had pleasure of interacting with Anil for a brief period of time, and you're one of the most positive and optimistic folks I know. And you bring up a good point that we all tend to reflect on COVID as a pandemic, but there are a lot of positives. There are a lot of positives, and one being, I genuinely feel, and Anil, I agree with you, that it gave the service industry a positive jolt in terms of adopting technology. And in many ways, it's a positive, right? Think about it. In every other industry, we all can go remote, work from home, and get work done. Frontline workers cannot go remote, right? They cannot go remote. They have to follow additional safety procedures, right? They have to get the work done. And how do you get it done? You adopt technology. And that's a trend we have to be thankful about. Let me extend that. On that positive note, vaccines are touchwood around the corner. We have started traveling. In fact, this week we had our first in-person client meeting in a year, team. So really, really exciting. Texas has completely opened up. I'm not surprised. In the US, we can argue whether it's too soon or not. But there is positivity around. We are seeing clients coming back and making buying decisions. One thing, David, that you take from the pandemic, when you look back 10 years from now, right? We all look back and we talk about the dot-com boom or the financial crisis. What's that one thing that we are taking away, personal or professional? What will you remember the pandemic about?
Well, not to try and outdo Anil on optimism, but as a 45 week a year traveler, I think the thing I remember most is being home with my family. Really, truly, the connections on that side. Here every day. I have slightly older kids than you, one off of college, two in high school, and that's time that I got with them that I never would have had. And we often talk about it on the other end, right? Road warriors, I'll never get that time back. Well, I'll never have to give that time up. But on the professional side, I think the wake up, or maybe again a little broader than professional, is really around it can happen again, right? I stopped working in New York City a couple of months after 9/11, and that was such a shock to the system. But the city responded in a very interesting way, and people were together, and we were bonding, and we were getting through it as one. This was disruptive in a very different way, and I think it just reminds us that whatever we think our kind of foundation is, we need to be ready for that disruptive change, and it could come from any corner. It could be technology, it could be a virus, it could be something else, and again, it doesn't always have to be bad, but I think it gets back to your comment about agility and adaptability. I think it reminds me again, just the ground's never steady, and we have to keep moving.
Yeah. Anil, one takeaway from the pandemic.
Yeah, true. Look, David, I'm also not as young, so maybe I'm getting a lot more philosophical than maybe both of you. And I can only add a philosophical touch to it, from two perspectives. Number one, that nothing seems to be permanent, whether it is a good level or a bad level, things can change at any time, and things can change at a global level. I mean, I can never have imagined that the road outside, which has 1,000 vehicles at any point in time, did not have a bicycle last March, April. It's unimaginable for me that the roads can be empty in India. Never have I seen that. Okay, so anything is possible. That's point number one, and that applies to field service management industry. So don't hang up to your prejudices, your ideas. Anything can change.
Yeah.
And number two, which is the philosophical one that I mentioned, is that we will overcome. Okay, no matter what happens, I think mankind has that inbuilt resilience in it, from time immemorial, to bounce back no matter what happens. Okay, so these two things I think have to be looked together, whether you are in field services or not, in general, in life, wherever.
Yeah.
That would be my submission.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we shall overcome, no doubt. And David, I echo the traveling thing with you personally. As the sales leader, every week I would be out. So much so that now I've appreciated the time at home, and you tend to realize you can get a lot done without traveling. And finally, I'm reaching a point. And by the way, during my travels, when you start feeling guilty, right? You have young kids at home, and at all the airports, I would try to pick up gifts for the kids and the wife. I've reached a point, I haven't traveled in 52 weeks now, exactly a year. My wife the other day was asking me, when are you traveling next? I said, why? No, I'm missing the gifts. And you are more disruptive at home than when you were traveling. So there's good and bad. There's positives, but no, I've really enjoyed the time at home. Truly, I've enjoyed the time, and it has given you a new appreciation to stuff. And uh, even at work, when you bring that perspective out, and just the concept of we shall overcome, things are turning around. Anil, thanks. And you always look at the positive. That's something I've learned from you. Let's be positive. We'll keep marching, we'll adopt technologies, and we'll help our service folks implement better. Now we're towards the end. Maybe a few last questions. There's one I see that we haven't answered. If it's okay, I'll pick it up. As 5G gets rolled out in mature markets, how do we see 5G enhancing field operation space? Any interesting proof of concepts, pilots that you have being tried on 5G in the field operation space? Anil, do you want to start with that?
Yes. Yeah. So I would see a lot of proliferation of the IoT and computing on the edge kind of going up with 5G, especially in advanced countries where the adoption of 5G is really ramping up. So again, that's a digital extension. We spoke about artificial intelligence, automation and AR, VR. IoT is the other aspect of it, and especially as companies try to be more proactive and predictive in providing their services. I think 5G will bring a revolution because you can basically enable many devices with IoT, and you can have the computation happening at the edge itself, right? Which is a whole different way of looking at predictive maintenance. So yes, it will impact in a big way. Again, having digital impacts.
David, 5G.
Yeah, the first wave is the build of the networks, right? There's massive, tens of billions of dollars committed. Again, just talking only domestically, I know we have a global audience, but tens of billions of dollars vocally committed from the top carriers. There's a massive need for that skill set, a shortage of that talent. So there's huge opportunity today for people that want to get into field service, especially if you're willing to climb a 400-foot or 1,500-foot tower. There's a lot of monetizable opportunity out there. And then I couldn't say it better than what Anil said. I think you start to create connectivity that enables services, that creates the next wave of innovation. And we don't know exactly what that will be, but having been close to a business that was investing in this and inside of one, there's some amazing things coming. And I think I'm excited to see how that presents new opportunity, especially in the service industry.
Yeah. And let me wrap up by saying we are inside the industry, and we're seeing this. There's an explosion happening, guys. The service industry, no better time to be here. We are seeing talent come in, rightly so, across the board. We're seeing exciting new technologies. This combined power of humans and machines to keep the world up and running really excites us. So no better time to be here. We're coming out of the pandemic. People are starting to adopt more technology. Couldn't have been more exciting. I wanted to thank both of you. Our goal as a part of this series is to celebrate people, celebrate leaders, celebrate technologies, just bring a raw passion, bring a raw service passion to the audience. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to all of you. Thanks to all the attendees, and wish you the best. And we'll see you around soon. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Prateek.
Thank you. Thank you, Prateek. Thank you, David. Thanks to the audience. Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye.